Hello, hello, welcome back. Today we are discussing episode 18 of the Dicely campaign. Today is 4 books. We are once again in a nice temporary location, so do me a favor and don't judge the lighting too hard because this whole space is not set up for this. Let's start talking about this episode though, because there's a lot here. So this episode 18, is really kind of a part 2 to episode 17. Because if you remember in episode 17, we finally made it to the library. And we had so much research to do that it didn't all get finished in one episode. So episode 18 is really a giant library session with a little bit of other stuff sprinkled in here. At the beginning of this episode / the end of the last episode, Drac actually overhears some people at the inn talking about how the Cleansing Breath mercenary group is supposed to be coming into Valambridge for Heroes Fest, and they're bringing a dragon with them. This is especially exciting to Drac because his brother is a part of the Cleansing Breath mercenary group, and we know that his brother was off hunting dragons. So maybe he's gonna show up here. After that and a quick breakfast, the group heads off to the library to continue our studies. I think we're on day 3 of studies at the beginning of this episode. Abe has been under house arrest for the last couple of days, but he has a meeting with Shandier Merrymiss today, who wants to speak with him for some unknown reason. So he comes with the rest of the party to the Arkanette Institute, and when we go down into the library, he heads up to the Shandier's office. And Merrymiss is very welcoming of him. He invites him in, lets him sit, and then reveals to Abe that he thinks he knows Abe from before. Abe only has memories from up to a couple 10 days ago, so it's very possible that Merrymiss might know him, but Abe doesn't remember it. And this is confirmed very quickly as the Shandier tells Abe that his cadaver, his inert body, was once in Valambridge. Not too long ago, in fact. Merrymiss and the Arkanette Institute has been studying Starborn and soul shards, especially from dead Argon folk. And at the time, it sure did look like Abe was dead, so he was one of the cadavers that the group studied. And when they were finished studying him, they commissioned DNR Solutions to bring his body down to Starcross to be buried. And as we know, Gideon is the member from DNR Solutions that was given that task. And Abe actually awoke on the journey down there. And Merrymiss gives Abe a quick rundown on the studies they were doing, what they know about Argon Veludium. Anything that Abe is asking questions about, Merrymiss is really happy to provide answers. He also gives us some interesting information that the diamond that Abe stole to resurrect Azaria was not, in fact, a diamond, but a soul shard itself. Merrymiss does say that the soul shards are a pretty hot commodity on the black market, and since we know that Starborn are going missing on the roads, we can kind of assume that they're being kidnapped and harvested for those soul shards. Which is not great. After Abe finishes his talk with Merrymiss, he comes down into the library to meet with the rest of us. And so now here I have a problem. I think I said this in our last recap, but there was so much information at the library, and all the players have put all the information into one group lore document now, so we all have all the information. And that document is 17 pages long, and one part of it links out to a whole other PDF. So there's just a lot of information here. And it's hard for me to know what is going to be the most relevant for you that you should hear about in the recap. I'm gonna kind of skim over a lot of it, and if it becomes super relevant in future episodes, I'll let you know that we learned it originally at the library, okay? Okay, so let's start with Nell. Nell, on her first couple of days, started by looking at Reynard and sorcery and magic. She is finally starting to understand what her magic is and where her magic comes from. She finally comes across the term sorcerer, which we've all known she has been for the last 18 episodes, but she is just learning about herself now. In the next couple of days, she finds the journal of Arthur Pendrick's field research. And this is a guy that we heard originally about at the Dunan Mountains. He has done a lot of research on Meldon and the Chosen and that religion. Christy even kind of only barely scratches the surface in the episode, kind of explaining what she finds in there. This whole Abe Meldon doc is going to be a huge point kind of going forward in the story, so we're going to hear all about all the things in here at some point, I'm sure. So I'm not going to tell you it all right now. Sorry. Elowen spends her time originally researching The Stranger. In her first couple of days, she finds some stories of the stranger throughout history. She finds a new encounter, a much older encounter than one she's ever heard of before, that took place about 3,000 years ago, which seems to be the first stranger encounter. She also spends her time looking at bestiaries of infernal creatures, trying to figure out what this thing in the forest might be. And then the second half of her research, she spends looking up gods and how they ascended to power. This was a request by her patron, Waylela, and we don't know why Layla wants this information, but we're concerned. Gideon spends his first couple of days looking up the Midnight Sun, which is a phrase we heard in Balesville. Cardrak Mithrilcoat was leading a group that kind of rallied around this idea of the Midnight Sun. And we come to realize here that that was the name that was given to a floating crystal that existed during the desolation when all of humanity and people went underground. It acted like a sun for them, and it was destroyed when the people rose back up during the Ascendancy. So this aligns with the anti-Ascendancy vibe that we've gotten from Cardrak thus far. And then in his second half of research, Gideon spends time looking himself up, and he comes to realize that he is listed as a student of the Arkanette Institute back when he was 11 years old, but it seems like he never finished his studies. He was only there for about a year, and he's listed as incomplete in the student logs, which is something he doesn't remember. Gideon seems to have a lot of memory lapse issues. Gideon has this mark on his chest, this soul scar, and he is, according to the Arkanette, the only non-Starborn ever to have a soul scar. And then finally, he does some research on the event in Balesville. Like we kind of already knew, all the reports that come back from different people are all just wildly different. It's all different types of catastrophes, but no one can align on what exactly happened there. And a number of people are listed as dead and missing after the event. Gideon finds his family in the list, and he sees himself and his parents listed as missing, but both of his siblings marked as deceased. Interestingly enough, Gideon is also marked as a person of interest in that list. Gideon takes this news not well, which is fair, and that's kind of all the research he ends up getting done. Drac, kind of in a similar vein, does a lot of studying on the Alumbrites. Alumbrites are these weird creatures of another realm. They are beings made of pure energy, and they are pure neutral. A lot of times in lore, the Alumbrites seem to exist as kind of a foil to both the devils and the gods of the world. They act as a middle ground between the two. So the Alumbrites and Argon folk and the Starborn are all kind of intertwined somehow. They're also probably connected to the Midnight Sun. Many people believe that Alumbria is where all the gods and devils went to during the desolation, trapped inside the Midnight Sun, inside that crystal. And then finally, Azaria does some research on the main quest line. They do some research on the Druid Enclaves, which we heard about feels like ages ago. But this is super important because there's some druidic ritual that needs to happen every 500 years, and druids haven't existed in this world for a long time. So we're trying to figure out where they've gone and bring them back in time to do this ritual and save the planet, you know? The actual research that Azaria did is not something I'm going to share with you here either because, again, it's super freaking long and super in-depth. I shouted Denny out last time for this, but again, insane amount of work Denny put into this. It's so cool. Azaria's research came with a sea shanty. That's how in-depth we're going here. And that's kind of it. We actually finally finish our research. And when we make our way back to the inn one day, we find a note has been left there from Janet for us. And she invites us to like the grand courthouse in Valambridge. And so we go. But when we get there, we realize that we're meeting with the Reeve of Valambridge, Astrid Grand. And essentially, they just brought us here to thank us for helping the city. And they dish out some great monetary rewards, as well as a number of really cool magical items. It almost feels too generous for the C+ performance I feel like we gave, but the gifts are really good, and God knows that we need as much help as we can get in these fights. And that's kind of it. That's the episode. Play Dicely is going to be back live on January 9th. We're taking a teeny tiny little extra holiday break, so we are skipping January 2nd and coming back live on January 9th. And if you want to watch that episode live with us, you can do that at twitch.tv/DicelyDND, Jan 9th, 6 p.m. Eastern Time. I hope to see you there. The team loves to have people in chat. But that is all for now, my friends. I hope you are staying happy, staying kind, and as always, remembering to play Dicely. Bye!